What up, family? Y'all know what time it is. It is time for another episode. Y'all want me to sing it, don't you? Can we talk? Okay, that's all you're getting this time. That's all you're getting, just a few sound bites. But listen, I want to say thank you all for tuning in. I have been enjoying these dialogues, these conversations, and you know I've been enjoying the responses that not only do I see in the chat, but also those that have been sent to me via email. And so let's just keep this train going tonight, right? I got a pretty good subject. I think you're going to like it. So let's jump right into it. In this episode, I want to ask a question. And the question is simply this. Was Bishop T.D. Jakes right? Right. Was Bishop T.D. Jakes right? So I'm not sure whether you have seen the clip or not, but recently Bishop Jakes has somewhat come under fire over a clip from a sermon that he preached that went viral. And so if you didn't see it, we're going to roll it real quick so you can check out and see what I'm talking about.
This breaks all sociological orders of the culture we're living in now. Because we are raising up women to be men. And you are not applauded for your femininity. You are applauded in the contemporary society by how tough, rough, nasty, mean, aggressive, hateful, possessive you are, and you are climbing the corporate ladder, but we are losing our families. I know you can buy your own car. I know you can buy your own house, but until you create a need that I can pour into, I have no place in your life. So stop coming home bragging to me about how much you don't need me and wonder why I shy away. The conversation has become, let's prove to the men how dispensable they are. And it is born out of pain because we hurt you and betrayed you and lied to you and cheated to you. And you became like you became out of pain.
Woo! I feel like Nelly, it's getting hot in here, right? It's getting hot up in here. And so, as you may know, there's been a lot of conversation concerning this clip. There was even a whole dialogue on the Ricky Smiley show that went viral with them talking about how they felt about what Bishop Jakes has to say. And so, this particular clip, it seemed to have sparked a conversation about the roles that women play in today's society. Now, there are some people who, when they heard his comments, they was like, oh man, that dude just old-fashioned, old archaic dude. He too old to be talking about what women are doing in today's time. I mean, it's a new time, this is a new season, it's a new day. What's that song say? And I'm feeling good. I don't know why that song just jumped into my head. But some people have just sort of put him in that category of just simply being old-fashioned. Others almost say it's dangerous because to them, they feel like Bishop Jakes is pushing this narrative of women only being good for being in the bedroom and in the kitchen, right? That all they can do is clean a house and have some children. Now, you have one side who's ready to throw him under the bus, but the reason it's controversial is because there's another side that agrees with him. Without having two sides, there is no controversy. So let's not just talk about one side, let's talk about this other side that didn't really see his comments as being so bad. See, there's another group of people who actually feel like men are losing their place, especially black men, as it relates to who are we in our homes. And so when I thought about this controversy conversation, there was a lot of things that we could deal with and unpack, but there was something particularly that stood out to me. And the thing was, are there really clearly defined roles for men, and are there clearly defined roles for women? Now, I think one of the things that causes this to be somewhat controversial is because very often we define a role as a chore or a job that can really be done by anybody, right? When you think about the roles of what's traditionally a woman's role, you think about things like cooking and cleaning. Well, the truth of the matter is men can cook and men can also clean. So if it's something that can be done by either side, how is it a role that's only identifiable for one side, right? Well, for me personally, I think that when we talk about roles, instead of talking about roles, let's talk about purpose, right? Because you might find that there's a difference in a role and in a purpose, right? Because we all can do similar things, but then there are some things that each of us was specifically designed to do. Many of you have heard that men are called to be protectors. I wish I had a couple clips right now of just some brothers whooping tail, right? Well, we did that a couple weeks ago with the Kung Fu fighting, but men are traditionally in a role of being a protector. Now, I know that for some of you that might sound archaic, but the truth is, if you just look at how a man is built versus how a woman is built, we're talking naturally speaking now, right? Now, I'm not talking about who's packing, right? Because I know some of you sisters, you packing, you got your 9 too, right? But let's go back to a place where there were no guns. Or what if you can't get your hands on your gun and a prowler has entered the building? 9 times out of 10, that man has a better opportunity to physically protect his family, right? Not saying she can't throw them hands, but he's built with a strength that's different than hers. Why? Because he was designed in order to protect their family. When it comes to having children and even bearing children, it doesn't take long to realize that only a woman, right, can actually bear a child, right? And we're talking about by scientific design. What's interesting is that not only can a woman only be the woman who can bear the child, she was naturally given the ability to nurse that child. So there was a time there were no grocery stores, but that baby still got to eat because mama was built with the design not just to have that baby, but also to nurse that baby. And not only was she built to nurse that baby, she was also built scientifically to nurture that child. There's something about a mama's love. Don't tell me it ain't, because why do you think that a father could have a son? From the time that boy is born, he puts a football in his crib. And when he's 3 years old, he's doing drills around her. Go running this, come and knocking them down and doing all this stuff. And then he puts him through college and puts him through high school and does all these things. And he gets drafted in the NFL, stands in front of that camera and forgets about the dad that's been training him his whole life. You know what he says? Hi, Mom. I'm like, come on, man. I mean, Daddy can't get no love. Why? Because though that father trained him, it's not the same as a mother nurturing him. And so when we talk about these different roles and purposes and functions, of course, in today's time, we don't like to talk about anything that would classify somebody as male or female, right? Anytime you try to put that stereotype on somebody, all of a sudden you got to fight now, right? Because I don't want to be known as a woman. I don't want to be known as a man. And there are no differences between men and women. And I'm not going to dive into that tonight on this episode, but I will say this, that even in sports, recently there was a trans man who was swimming in women's sports. And come to find out, when he swam against other men, he was horrible. But he was the top swimmer when he swam against other scientifically biological women. Why? Because he had a design that made him stronger, made him faster. But you know what? We'll leave that for another time. Because when I thought about this notion of having no roles in society, one of the things that came to my mind is basketball, right? Y'all, for those who don't know, I'm a b-ball lover. I'm a former b-ball player. That's a whole nother story. But we live in a time now where what we have of 5 players, they are now called positionless positions, if you will. Back in the day, there was a time where short fellas were point guards. Tall fellas, 7-footers, you were the traditional center. What that meant is that as a traditional center, your job was to stay around the basket. Don't try to dribble the ball. Don't try to bring up the ball. Do not shoot the ball outside of that little area because your position is to be under the basket. Well, now you have a guy like KD, right? Here's a 7-footer handling the rock and known for shooting 3-pointers. You have other guys in the NBA who they are slash, right? They don't just have one position. They are point forwards and guard and all kind of stuff. Because what they're saying is that in today's NBA, there are no traditional positions. And while that may be true, while there may not be traditional positions, every person on the team still has a role. There are some guys who are known as role players, right? It's not their job to do what the star player is being paid to do, right? So when there's just a few seconds left on the clock, it's not a role player job to now try to score the winning basket. That's not your role. And even though 7-footers can handle the rock, they are still expected to block a shot when the time calls for it, right? You don't expect to see Damian Lillard under the basket trying to block a shot, right? Can he block a shot? Sure he can, but that's not necessarily his role. And so even in a sport where they're trying to remove roles, there are some guys who have a role by design. That by design, a 7-footer was born and built to be able to be a shot blocker. Why? Because he's tall enough to block and alter shots, right? And what happens is that even though there are different roles on the team, in a good team, they put the team ahead of individual stats. At the end of the game, doesn't matter how much you scored if the team lost. At the end of the game, doesn't matter how many rebounds you got if the team lost. And so I want to sort of bring this to a close by bringing that same mentality into the family. Though there are certain things that a man and a woman, husband and wife can do, there are certain roles that we were designed to do. I talked about being a protector, but I want to talk about one other role, one last role, that I hope makes this make a little bit more sense. Because when you want to talk about the role between husband and wife, because that has a lot to do with this conversation, the best example is to look at Christ in the church. Christ plays the role of the husband, while the church plays the role of the wife. Now, there are some things that they both can do. Christ and his church can cast out demons. Christ and his church can lay hands on the sick and they will recover. Christ and his church can both do miracles. But the difference is that while the church can do a lot of things that Christ can do, only Christ could die for the church. It was only Christ who had the ability to offer salvation for the church. And maybe that's why when the Bible talks about these specific qualifications of being a husband, being a wife, he says something to the husband that he doesn't say to the wife. And he says, husbands, don't just love your wife, but love her to the point that you're willing to die for her. In any family, there are certain roles that each one of us gets to play. As a husband, my role is to be willing to die for my wife's benefit. Now, that death might not be physical, but sometimes I got to die to my attitude. Sometimes I got to die to my emotions. Sometimes I got to die to my desires. Why? Because as Christ gave everything for his church, shouldn't I give everything for my wife? As a matter of fact, I think for those that know me, hopefully you see this dynamic in my relationship. Doc, I got one of the baddest chicks on the planet, right? She is a bad mamma jamma, right? Just as fine as she can be. And if you know us, you know that my wife is an extraordinary person. When it comes to preaching, she can preach maybe even better than me. There's a lot of things she does on a platform that I don't have the ability to do. But when you get around us, you never see us fighting for the ball, right? You wouldn't see two basketball players fighting each other for one rock. In the same notion, my wife and I, we're not fighting for a position. Because when it comes time to find somebody who can help lift me up as it relates to the things God has called me to do, nobody can do that like her. Nobody. But when the enemy is after my family, when the enemy's on the attack, can't nobody lay his life down and pray for this family like I can. I want you to understand that it doesn't make me better or less than her. We're just operating in the roles we were designed to function in. And so the question remains, was Bishop Jake right? Well, I think if you listen to the whole sermon and not just a snippet, you might find out that what people are seeing as controversial really wasn't that bad if you listen to the whole message. Come on, guys. Do I believe that we live in a time where we are creating an environment where it's almost becoming imbalanced? Absolutely. Do I believe that God has purposed us to fulfill certain roles without losing our individual identity? Yeah. So the question is, was Bishop Jakes right? I believe he was. I believe he was right when you listen to him in the right context. But anything taken out of context can be something that makes no sense. And so even when you're listening to me, these are just small portions, but I encourage you to listen to me preach on Sunday sometimes. Listen to me preach on Wednesday sometimes, because I don't want you just to take a small sample of something and try to make that the whole meal. Man, that's my time. Where does the time go, guys? And I want to sing it again, but I hear the music playing, so I'm gonna let the music play. But listen, I've enjoyed these conversations, and as I said, this is my stance, what I believe, but it doesn't mean that I'm not willing to hear what you believe. And so I want you to please send me an email, right? Let me know, not just what you agree with, but let me know, Pastor, I didn't agree with this. That's cool. Maybe your disagreement can spark a higher conversation, because the goal of this conversation is to get to a place where we're better informed, right? I believe that we make better decisions when we have all the information. So I want you to write me. I want you to follow me, and I want you to stay tuned, because listen, we'll be back next week. We're gonna keep pushing the conversation, and I'm enjoying what God is doing. I want you to be blessed. Have a great time, great night, great evening, whatever time you're watching. I'm out.